All right, so we're gonna do introductions and then we're gonna talk to everybody about the reason why they're here. And then we're gonna kind of get into some of the nuts and bolts of constitutions and you. So we'll start with you. Who are you?
My name is Alex Henry and I'm a graduate student in the student life office.
My name is Kenyatta Floyd. I'm a senior psychology major.
And what organization are you here for, Kenyatta?
Alpha Phi Omega, National Search Attorney, and Jolie Fixed.
Okay. And I'm Dana Barnard. I'm the Assistant Director of Student Life, and I work with several organizations on bettering their constitutions and making them more effective for their organizations. So that's part of the reason why I'm presenting this session tonight. So, Kenyatta, why are you here?
Constitutions are important for our ISOs to remain on Eastern's campus, so I came to get an understanding about the Constitution for you at this point.
Okay. All right. So one of the things before we start getting into actually writing the constitutions, we need to talk about what is the purpose of the Constitution and who all in your group should be aware of the Constitution. So let's start with the first one. What is the purpose of your Constitution?
Set some guidelines for your organization.
Okay, guidelines for your organization.
Some information on your organization's history.
Okay, organization's history. Anything else from either one of you?
Rules and procedures.
Rules and procedures. There we go. I like that one. All right. Who in your organization should be aware of your Constitution? Everybody? Okay. And when you say everybody, like, should everybody be detailed and in depth on the Constitution?
I think in joining an organization, everybody should be deeply through the Constitution, at least that first initial time. And after that, it's like really keep that in your mind.
Okay. I think with your constitutions, you guys kind of hit it right on with the purpose. Like, the purpose is the functionality of your organization, okay? So your constitution should tell you how frequently you should be meeting, who your officers should be, how your officers are elected, who your members are, what your officers do, what your advisors do, what your organization does. Like, your constitution kind of is your organization. Like, how do we function? How do we operate? What is our purpose? Why do we exist? I mean, everything. The people who should be aware of your constitution, Kenyatta, you were right when you said that all of your members should be aware. Every member who joined your organization should get a copy of that constitution, because they do need to know kind of what's going on. But the people who need to know your constitution are your officers and your advisor, okay? Any issue that comes up within your organization should be able to be addressed by your constitution. So I'm working with a group right now to find out and how to address a situation where they had one person running for an office, and the way that their organization voted, half the group said, yes, we want this person, and the other group said, no, we don't want this person. No one abstained. It's a dead heat tie, so like a 5-5. Their constitution has no layout for what a tie would be. And so that's something that you have to look at in your elections. Like, is one person being left out of the vote, so that in the instance that there is a tie, you can address that by this person gets to vote to break the tie, or we go this direction or that direction. So your constitution really should tell your organization how you're operating, okay? So as you're thinking about that, you really need to be aware of that piece. Okay. Now, on the Student Life website, one of the things that we have is a link to really help organizations get their constitutions going. And we have a template, and hopefully the computer will let us go there. But on this template, it really lays out what your constitution needs to look like. So from like the inclusion of your name, and we're going to kind of walk through that tonight, if the link will let us. But you have to really look at these items, and these are the things that your organization really wants to talk about in that aspect, okay? So right here on the RSO website, if you go to the Constitution template and you click on it, it will open up to a Word document. The nice thing about this Word document is you guys can edit it for yourself. So you can essentially type your Constitution into this document, and should put you in a situation to be easily approved by the Student Life Office if you're a new RSO or if you're just updating. So and this top piece is just kind of an introduction that says that RSOs may use the template, so on and so forth. But when you scroll down, it starts, and you definitely have to give your organization a name, and so you want to put that there. And then when was this Constitution adopted? And that's one of the things that's important, is sometimes in transitions of organizations, you don't always get when the last Constitution was updated or documented. And so by putting the date on the document, it allows you to see what your most recent activity was within your Constitution. Okay, then you have to give your group a name. And so like for your organization, Kenyatta, you said it was Alpha Phi Omega, right? And so you would formally want to list it as Alpha Phi Omega, but then for your Constitution, to make it a little bit shorter, you may add a clause or a statement that says hereinafter referred to APO, so that you don't have to type out Alpha Phi Omega throughout the Constitution. The other thing is for like organizations, like I actively work with Black Student Union, and most of the time they don't refer to themselves as Black Student Union, but BSU. And so like what the hereinafter also indicates what your common name is for campus, okay? So you can, that's kind of the nickname of the group or whatever is your hereinafter, and then makes it appropriate to be used throughout your Constitution. The next piece that you want to work on is the Article 2 item, and that is your purpose, okay? Some people call this an objective, some people will call it goals, but for a Constitution, you want more of a purpose or an objective. And that is, what is your purpose for existence? So my familiarity with APO, some of the things under your purpose need to include like your community service aspects and your leadership aspects and things of that nature, that really what the national organization is founded on. Is what you would want to include in your purpose or objective statements. And that section, even though there's only section 1, if you have multiple, you can add additional sections under there. You're not just limited to one, because you probably want to break it down by topic area. So like service might be one for you all, and then leadership may be another one, fellowship or brotherhood, you know, depending upon how your organization is laid out, you have those different aspects to add in, okay? The next piece that we look at is the compliance piece, and this one is more a university standard, as well as if you work with like a national or outside of Eastern affiliated organization. When you have the compliance piece, it indicates that you're going to follow all state, federal rules, Eastern rules and regulations. And then your section 2 is that you're going to uphold any of the rules or regulations of your state or national piece. So like you're covering yourself under Eastern's rules and federal law, and then you take it to your local or national, whatever group is, and then you add your standing rules and things of that nature. If you guys follow Robert's Rules of Order, that's where you would put that in there. Those types of things on how your organization kind of operates. So these are whose rules are we following, and you put that in this section. In this part, and some of the articles can be a little bit shifted as we get a little bit further in, but kind of after you figure out how you operate, I think it's important to talk about who is our membership, okay? So you have an organization, you have a purpose, we have rules. Who can be us? How do we get people connected with us? And how does that flow? So like some groups have active members and alumni members and part-time members and ex officio members and whatever. So the amount of sections here are really up to you. But again, you want to include everyone in that membership piece. So here, then after kind of your members, you want to have like the non-discriminatory statement. Like we're not going to discriminate on based on race, religion, sexual orientation, gender, abilities, blah, blah, blah. And then for all groups, you want to have a non-hazing statement. And this doesn't, a lot of people, when you think of hazing, you look at just Greek level organizations, and that's not necessarily what you're wanting to do. Because any organization is capable of hazing individuals by asking them to do something that is out of their comfort zone or out of their norm that they may not want to do. And so you want to have a non-hazing statement in there to say our members aren't going to be hazed or have any of those types of things done to them. And then that's kind of where some of your additional categories come in. So we can have all of our different types of members. And if you need 50 types of members, you can have 50. If you need 3, you can have 3, kind of up to the group. Here's where I differ a little bit based on the template. This goes next into the executive officers. I tend to go, when I'm writing a constitution, next into the selection of officers, because I want to know what my criteria for my officers is before I tell who my officers are. How do my officers come about? When do they come about? Where do they come from? Do they have to be a member of the organization for a certain amount of time, and all those types of things? So this is where some of your sections can alternate a little bit. So I would next do selection of officers, but in your selection of officers, I usually do selection of officers, like your term limits, your resignation, impeachment, and this piece tells you what happens, like, so how do we elect them, or who can be elected, how do we elect them, if they resign, what happens, are there need for special elections, if we don't like how somebody's doing something, how do we impeach them or get rid of them, so on and so forth. So all your rules for how your elected people come about. This is also an area where you're going to want to have information on special committees. If your organization might sometimes have part-time committees, you may want to look into this section and say this is how a special committee would be established and how it would function and run, just so that you don't get in trouble for having extra pieces pop up that aren't there. Okay, then you go back up for me to this executive officer piece. And in your section 1, you list out who your executive officers are going to be. So are you going to have a president, or are you going to have a chair? Are you going to have a vice president, or are you going to have a vice chair? Are you going to have officer 1, officer 2, whatever, but you list them out there. Then typically in section 1, what I do is I list any of the requirements of these officers that all of them share. So like if your organization requires a GPA requirement for your executive board, I would indicate in this section that all officers would need to meet the minimum GPA of whatever it is. This is where I also put that they all need to attend executive board meetings, or that they all need to attend general body meetings, or they, all of that stuff that just the executive board kind of has in common of their job duties. So here's who we are, here are our general job duties. Some people might list that as section 2. Then your next section is breaking down each of your officers, and this form is not, the way they have it set up is not how I prefer it, and this is where, again, you can tweak your constitution to be to your preference. I prefer to say president and then have a bullet list. So president is maybe number 1, and they're going to do A through J, and each thing is a bullet, where this is more paragraph style, reading heavy. This is, bullet pointed sometimes is a little bit easier flow and not as hard to miss, to make sure everybody's meeting their duties. So that's kind of a personal preference thing, but you want to list out every executive officer and what you're going to have them doing. One of the things that I always try to do on a constitution that I'm working with students as, and that a lot of times falls into job descriptions, but is that famous line of all other duties as assigned by president or advisor or organization, just to kind of cover you, because every once in a while there's things that your organization needs to do that, well, you just couldn't plan for. Maybe you decide to take on a new event, and so somebody has to have a new role or something of that nature. And so you're kind of covering yourselves to say, no, we didn't say that this was all you had to do. Remember, the last letter said you need to do anything else that's assigned to you. Alex likes that role in her job description in particular, because we just give her random extra things to do. So it's that protective clause. And your constitution is your organization protector and guidance. So prepare yourself for that. Okay, we talked about the selection of officers, and like all of this really kind of lays out some stuff. Like it even talks to you about if the position of president becomes vacant, how do you want that filled? And just because there's some content here doesn't mean you have to use verbatim what's in the template, but more of a guide as do we have provisions for this and how do we want to lay it out? Because ultimately it's up to the organization how they want things to happen. Okay. Most organizations on a campus need to have some type of meeting to function and to really make the organization go. What do you want these meetings to be like? Are you going to hold general body meetings? Is there a need for general body meetings? Is there a need for executive board meetings? But all your meetings are laid out here. The other thing that you lay out here is if there's a need to call an emergency meeting, how is that done, and how many people have to be present for an emergency meeting to be called? Other things that you want to include here is what is quorum for your group? So if you're trying to vote on something, like maybe spend money, and your group has 15 people in it and only 3 people show up at the meeting, can you by constitution vote on spending that amount of money? Well, that depends on how you define quorum, and quorum would need to be determined for probably your executive board and for your general body, depending upon how things go for you all and what's important. And quorum and voting doesn't just have to relate to money, it also relates to making decisions for the group or for your officers, okay? The other thing that your constitution, and I just thought of this, and usually mostly pertains to the election of your officers, but your constitution should also outline what votes are like secret ballot votes versus hand-raising votes, and those types of things, because sometimes people may not want to share who or what they're voting for, or if they're approving or disapproving a budget. And so this would be an area like your meetings and your selection area where you talk about how the voting is counted, okay? Something else too that I didn't see in the officers section, but is coming up here, is your advisors, okay? How are your advisors selected for your organization? How many advisors do you want? And what is their purpose? Like what are they doing for your group? But the other thing that a lot of groups don't realize is sometimes groups don't always necessarily get along with their advisor, and there's a need to get rid of their advisor, okay? You need to have a process in your constitution to tell you how you can do that, okay? And then when you sign an advisor on, they need to be aware of that protocol as well. So how do we select the advisors? And if for some reason we want to get rid of an advisor, how do we do that? And then the other thing too is sometimes on college campuses, people will sign on to be your advisor and then they get busy and they want to step down. What is the protocol for them stepping down? So like say your advisor takes on 3 new classes or is going back to school or doing something else and they want to step down, you need to have some provisions, like how much time do they still need to remain as your advisor to give you time to find someone else to replace them, those types of things. And then when you ask them to be your advisor, you need to share with them, okay, you know, this is how we have this set up, these are the types of duties that we want you to fulfill with our organization. And if there's a time where you want to step down from advising us, here's kind of how we would like that to happen so that we can remain in good standing with the institution, okay? But then at the same time, you're like, wow, this advisor is not supporting us, they're not coming to our stuff, they're not doing things. You also need to have a way of being able to ask them to step down, and what does that process look like? So all of that would go in this section, okay? Executive committee, to me, this one is kind of repetitive to your election of officers. So this one I don't feel is necessarily an area that you have to have if you cover it in your officers section, but you may want to outline some of these materials like in the meeting section. How often do you want the executive board or executive group meeting? Terminology, again, is up to your organization. Some groups may have an executive committee, some groups may have an executive board, an executive council, administrative council. All of the terminology is up to your organization. You don't have to go with what you see in this template document. Standing in special committees, that can go under your officers portion, or you can set up your own article for it. I think it depends on how many committees that you're going to have and how you treat them. Some of the organizations that I work with, their standing committees are considered part of their executive board, so you would want that with your executive group. If they're just standing committees and committee chairs and they're not functioning with the executive board in any manner, then you may pull it out and make it its own separate entity. So it's really going to depend on what you're doing for your organization and how you're setting that up and building it, okay? Then, finances and dues, that's another piece that needs to be in your constitution as a regulatory piece. One of the things that I encourage organizations to do is look at how much money you're charging in your dues right now and then expand that by probably about 25%, okay? And some of you are like, wow, if I had to increase my organization dues by 25%, I don't know that I could afford to be in it. True, for you now. But when you're writing a constitution, you're thinking about, you're kind of forecasting the future of your organization. So what are our dues not to exceed? And then you give yourself flexibility to do things with your dues. If you put in your constitution that dues are $10, then that doesn't give you any flexibility to run like a special. Like, you know, if you pay your dues today, you can get $2 off, or, you know, those types of things. It also doesn't allow you, like if your organization provides a t-shirt, like when you sign up or things like that, if the cost of t-shirts go up and your constitution says dues are $10 and t-shirts cost you $10, you have to make a constitutional amendment to be able to raise your dues and all of those kinds of things. So I work with organizations to set a not to exceed amount, and I try to get them to increase it by about 25% to give you that flexibility to go up or down, okay? When I work with most groups, we put our dues component in the membership area, because most of the time you need them to pay dues in order for them to be a member, and a lot of the finances and things of that nature go under your treasury and your advisory duties. But again, it's up to each group on how detailed out you feel that needs to be. Some groups that I work with, by the nature of their organization, like I'm working with one group and their dues amount is to not to exceed $2,500 because of the nature of what their group does. And so with that, they have payment plans and things of that nature. So if you feel like your organization might need to have further financial details, then you would want to include it in your constitution, okay? And then disciplinary procedures of members. Again, this can be its own separate article, or it can be in your membership piece up to the organization. But you definitely want to tell members, like, if you don't do the following things, this is what's going to happen to you, and this is how these procedures go. This is what the appeals process looks like, or we don't have an appeals process. But, you know, like 72 hours after you feel like you've been wronged, you have to have completed XYZ or notified whoever. But disciplinary measures, things of that nature, it gives you a way that if you have a member who's not being cooperative with you, you have a way to dismiss them from your organization, okay? So you definitely want to look at this piece and make sure you have something regarding that in it. Amendments. This is amendments, bylaws, and ratification section, and it talks about how your constitution is passed, how a person would add a bylaw or how they would make an amendment. Okay, bylaws are things that get added that are not part of the original document, so it's a new law. An amendment is I'm changing something that's currently in the Constitution. So like if at some point 10 years down the road they need to increase the dues amount, it would be an amendment to the Constitution because you're amending a current statement. A bylaw is something that may have been forgotten or omitted somehow from the Constitution to be added, okay? Then at the end of the Constitution, again, as you would on the front page, you want to put the date, the name of the organization, and the date in which the Constitution was amended or ratified or bylaws were updated, okay? Any questions on any of this before I close it out and we go on? Neither one of you? Okay, and again, this can be found on the Student Life website in the RSO section. This is the main Student Life website, and just click on this and then there's all the different RSO pieces there for you to use. So it is there. All right. So hopefully, Kenyatta, are you guys working on your constitution?
Yeah, and actually both of the organizations are working on my constitution. It's just, I guess the struggle is that what was passed down in both organizations is not complete or up to date. It was just a lot of loose ends.
Okay.
So you have to tighten up all the loose ends.
Okay. Who's working on tightening up those loose ends?
Well, in APO, we're all putting in our 2 cents, but on my dance team, it's only the executive board that's working on the Constitution. Because it's kind of hard to get everybody together outside of practice. So there's the selective, or whoever wants to help gets help. So
Okay.
that's mainly the executive.
Okay. Constitution writing can be a struggle. And one of the things that I found is the more people that you tend to involve in that endeavor, the harder the struggle becomes, because you're trying to intake everyone's opinions and things of that nature. Constitutions are long. If you were starting brand new and from scratch, that's a little bit easier. But when you're trying to edit or tweak something that's there, multiple opinions sometimes can be a challenge. So one of the things that I encourage groups to do is to try to get a small core group of people that you feel best represent the overall mindset of your organization to really work on the Constitution, because then you are getting focused people to spend dedicated amounts of time on making those edits and additions to the Constitution. Ultimately, what you have to remember is what I try to tell groups when you're trying to ratify a new Constitution is you have to present it 1 week, give people at least a week or more to review the Constitution, and then vote on it and make any potential changes. But what has to happen is when you present it, the next week when you come back, you have to ask if people have questions or concerns. If they have questions or concerns, you can't vote on it at that point. You have to figure out how you want to address those questions and concerns, and then you would table it again for another, you make those changes, send it out, look at it again. If there are no additional questions and concerns, you can vote on it essentially in that third meeting. But you want to make sure that if you do go committee style and not a whole group working on the Constitution, that you're giving everybody their turn to put things in, but it's in a little bit more of an organized, cleaner fashion with what you're working on. Okay. Kenyatta, for you, both of your groups are currently looking at their Constitution. As you're part of a group, most of you are in a college institution for 4 years. So if you're part of a group the entire time you're here, your Constitution should be reviewed at least twice while you're here. Constitution should be reviewed about every 2 years. Even if there are no changes made to it, you need to add kind of by that part where it says it was voted on and implemented on this day, reviewed, and then insert your year so that people know that the Constitution has been reviewed and that the organization is maintaining, keeping that document where they need it to be. So that, you know, in 10 years, they're not having to really kind of start from scratch, because people have kind of kept up with making changes as the Constitution has evolved. As some organizations grow, there's a need to add new executive board positions, or if groups shrink, you know, there's a need to take them away and things of that nature. So about every 2 years is what you want to do on the changing of your Constitution, updating those types of things. They should be getting read every year at the organization's retreat, especially by the officers, so they know what they're working with, but then really reviewed and updated is every 2 years. And I believe my last slide, if it'll come visit us, is are there any questions, comments, or concerns that we can help you with in your organization's endeavors to update their Constitution?
No, the template, I didn't know that there was a template, so that was on my
Okay,
So I appreciate that.
not a problem. Alex, do you have any questions?
No, I think that summarized constitutions very well, Ms. Bonner. Thank you.
Sure, you were. All right, well, if you don't have any questions, I'm good.
Thank you.
Thank you.